Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Aaron Chun. With the MLB season officially over, the first look at the NCAA playoff bracket, midseason NFL awards, and more to discuss, let's get right into it. In the Zone starts now. With me on desk is Billy Cullen and Gehrig Milbrandt. The Los Angeles Dodgers are your 2024 World Series champions. A brutal implosion by the Yankees defense in Game 5 ended any vague hopes of a surprise 3-0 comeback as New York's 5-run lead was erased in one inning. Unsurprisingly, Freddie Freeman was named World Series MVP, and the efforts of Tommy Edman, Walker Buehler, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto helped LA earn their 8th World Series title in franchise history. Gehrig, what takeaways did you get from the Fall Classic this year?
Oh, there are so many, Aaron.
Sure.
I think as long as I live, I'm going to have nightmares about Freddie Freeman's teeth. He was just a beast in this World Series, probably the most deserved World Series MVP out of anyone I've ever watched.
Right.
Just an endless barrage of 2-run homers, getting the Dodgers back in the game, and that 5th inning we talked about, I'd say not only the most brutal defensive implosion in an MLB game, not an MLB playoff game, not a World Series game, but probably the most brutal defensive implosion in sports at any level I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. It was just bad out there with that Aaron Judge ground ball, fly ball he drops, his first error all season, just happens to be there. Garrett Cole not covering the bag, Volpe on that low throw to Chaz Chisholm right there. Just everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for the Yankees there. I was watching that in my dorm room. I think I cried in front of my roommate. Not something I like to admit, but yeah, that's what happens when you play those Dodgers teams, and I guess you're cursed. I don't know.
It's weird to think. I mean, Aaron Judge is a pretty surefire defender. Volpe's a pretty surefire defender.
Gold Glover.
And that's a pretty basic play for Cole to make there. To see it all just kind of fall apart, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I think enough's been said. Billy, what are your thoughts?
To keep, raining on the, Yankees collapse. I think, obviously, Aaron Judge was a massive disappointment in this series. Mm-hmm. And this is going to put a big stain on his legacy until he finally wins one. He will always be remembered for this series. I think the second biggest disappointment for them was their bullpen. Their bullpen was great in the ALDS, the ALCS, and really throughout the whole regular season. And they gave up. In Game 1, obviously, we know what happened.
Right.
This game, I know the 5 runs were from Garrett Cole, but the game was still tied. Mm-hmm. And then Garrett Cole gets taken out of the game, and you had a lead 6-5, and you still gave up runs. Meanwhile, for the Dodgers, their pitching staff, I did not think was that good.
Yeah.
Flaherty did not even pitch good. Mm-hmm. And they still were able to overcome. I have a lot of respect for what we talked about Tommy Edman, but both Teoscar and Enrique Hernandez were massive for them at the bottom of the order. And with Ohtani being injured, and he was clearly not himself throughout the rest of that series, what they got obviously out of Freddie Freeman, but Mookie Betts was great in this series on both sides. So the Dodgers deserve this.
Right.
They outplayed them, and quite frankly, when it comes to the Yankees, they just didn't show up when it mattered most.
And I mean, Enrique Hernandez, to go back to that real quick, he's been known as a postseason performer from 2017, from 2021 with the Red Sox. I mean, he's someone who's always been a sure bet. And I think having that guy at the bottom of the lineup, I think you could kind of afford to let Ohtani kind of slump a little bit. But now the offseason has officially begun, meaning it's time to speculate about awards, free agents, and it's never too late to make some bold predictions for 2025. This year's free agency sees the likes of Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, and Alex Bregman, just to name a few, hit the open market. Billy, what do you expect will be the biggest or most shocking addition of this offseason?
So I just want to go through those 3 names that we talked about, Juan Soto, Bregman, and Corbin Burns. I do not see Bregman leaving Houston. I feel like he's just kind of been a staple within that organization.
Right.
Baltimore would be beyond dumb to let Corbin Burns, who is one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball, to let him walk out that building.
Absolutely.
Now, Juan Soto is interesting to me, and the reason I say that is because he still has yet to really find his home, and you know he's going to want to get a long-term deal because since the start of the 2022 season, if he were to leave the Yankees, it would be his 4th team since the start of that season.
Right.
But everywhere he's gone, he's had success.
Right.
Won a World Series with the Nationals. Went out with the Padres to the NLCS in his first year. And then obviously this year with the Yankees going to the World Series. You know that the market for Juan Soto is going to be huge because he was really good in these playoffs.
Right.
You would assume that the Yankees are going to do everything they can to keep him, but I think that that Philadelphia is obviously going to get involved in this. All the big markets are going to. Probably the Dodgers are going to do everything they can to pull this off as well. Now, a low market team who maybe necessarily doesn't have all of the money, but I feel like if they got this guy, it would absolutely transform them into a top tier contender, and that's Kansas City Royals.
Yeah.
And with Bobby Witt Jr. being as great as he is, with Salvador Perez in the playoffs being who he is, the great veteran he is, if Juan Soto were to go there, they would clearly have a great top 2 batting order, or in the sense of their top 2 bats.
Right.
And they went to the LDS this year, and they're young. You can only assume the future will be great. Future would be bright if you were to go.
Absolutely. Gehrig, I'm sure you have some thoughts about this.
I do not want to even consider Juan Soto in a Kansas City Royals uniform. That team would be horrifying. And I've watched Juan Soto all year. And as you can say, as a person who's watched Juan Soto, he is the reason the Yankees win so far this season. The Yankees he is everything the Yankees are bad at. He can draw those walks. He can hit off lefties. He doesn't just rely on hitting a dinger every time.
Right.
Like, he is the sole reason this team wins so far. And we're going to need to make some very, very difficult decisions because with the Yankees, there's a lot of familiarity with your players. You'd like to keep the same guys year in, year out. And we're going to need to drop some of those guys. If you want to dish out all that money to Judge, Cole, and now Soto at the same time, some very difficult decisions are going to need to be made in the Bronx in the coming months. Again, I hope he stays, but man, it's going to be tough.
I think one team that could be a player for him that isn't really a big market team, but could be a bit of a surprise, the Washington Nationals. I think they are perfectly set up with a lot of young talent right now. Dylan Cruz, James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, 2 guys who were traded to get Juan Soto to the Padres are now starting to come into their own. I think that could be a very transformative move for the Nationals. I think there's one name that isn't really talked about a lot because it's been kind of uncertain whether he'll be a free agent or not. Roki Sasaki from Japan. He is everything Yoshinobu Yamamoto is, and he's 23 years old. Anyone can sign him because he's technically an amateur free agent. I think this is someone that I think my bold prediction, I think the Phillies are going to get him.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be all over him. This past week in college football, Beaver Stadium was packed with over 111,000 anxious fans to watch the top 4 Big Ten matchup as they welcomed the Buckeyes. Both defenses showed up, limiting both offenses, but the Buckeyes were able to leave Happy Valley feeling sad as they won 20-13. There were moments throughout the game where Penn State had opportunities to take the lead, but they couldn't capitalize. With this loss, Penn State drops to 4th in the Big Ten standings, below Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. Gehrig, do you believe this was the Nittany Lions' best chance to end their losing streak against Ohio State?
Yeah, it is. I can tell you the exact moment where they could have ended it. Right at the end of the game. They're on the goal line. They got a 1st and goal, and they get nothing out of it. I was watching the game on a bus. I thought that was it right there. I stopped watching. I just sat down, put my headphones in. I gave up because that was it right there. And we may have lost the footage last week, but I said a lot of things about Penn State. I made my feelings known. I made my prediction. And I thought it was going to blow up in my face right there. And the Buckeyes come up with an amazing defensive stop and just run the clock out. That was it right there for Penn State. That's their season gone, I think. I don't know what this team can do in the postseason. They're projected to play Notre Dame. We'll get to that later. It's just another thing. Penn State cannot play up to competition in those big games unless they're against Iowa, of course.
Right.
And I think that trend is going to continue as long as Franklin's there and as long as his team's mindset is in. They consider themselves one of those top teams. They really haven't got that signature win yet to prove it. So they're either going to need a big mindset change or they're going to need that marquee win soon.
Mm-hmm. What thoughts do you have, Bill?
I mean, this was expected. That was one of the most Penn State losses I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Let's just go down just real quick on this losing streak that they've had. 2017, they had a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter and lost that game by 1. 2018, they had a 12-point lead in the fourth quarter and lost that game by 1 because James Franklin decided to run a running back draw on 4th and 5 to lose the game. 2019, they had chances to win, but obviously the Ohio State was better that year, but Penn State had chances. Mm-hmm. The next 2 years, Penn State just stunk. 2022, they had a fourth quarter lead and found a way to lose that game by double digits. And then last year, they scored their first touchdown with less than 2 minutes to go in the game, and their defense played great. Mm-hmm. Similar to today, their defense played great, but the offense couldn't score. When you just brought up that goal line stand, they ran dive, 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 and then they tried doing a rollout to Tyler Warren, which Ohio State obviously knew the ball was going to go to him, and they didn't have any other options after that. Another thing, too, about this game that just bothers me is they overthought it, which they do every year, but what they did specifically was they tried doing like this 2-quarterback thing where they like have the backup end and they do all these trick plays with Drew Aller playing wide receiver and all this going on, and I think they just shot themselves in the foot one too many times, and I never thought that the talent level was that big for Ohio State, even though Ohio State's definitely more talented. But at the end of the day, that game was decided strictly on James Franklin and Ryan Day, and Ryan Day's team came up with more plays than James Franklin's.
Right. After the big noon kickoff lived up to the hype, there were other upsets throughout the Saturday slate that plays a huge role in conference standings and the playoff outlook, with Clemson, Iowa State, and Kansas State being amongst the 5 top 25 teams that were upset, and with the first unofficial look at the NCAA playoff bracket, these losses come with a hefty cost. Billy, what was the biggest shock from this past week?
For me, I'm going to go with Louisville beating Clemson because Clemson, since week 1, has been really good. They're scoring 40-plus points in 5 out of their last 6 prior to Saturday. So they've been great at scoring the football, and really they haven't been giving up too many big plays on defense. And to be honest, I thought that they would face off with Miami in the ACC championship game, and I felt that they could beat Miami because Miami really can't blow anyone out. They really aren't a great team. They just got probably one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in the nation. But the contributions they've been getting from their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, 21 touchdowns this year, only 3 interceptions. He's been really good, but you have to do more than what they did against Louisville. Obviously, they lost by 2 possessions. An underrated loss to me that might not have as much playoff implications was how badly SMU beat Pitt. That was 48-11 at one point in the fourth quarter. That was a blowout, and I did not expect that, especially with what Pitt did to Syracuse a week ago. But yeah, I would say Clemson right now because they were on track to be maybe hosting a home playoff game in the first round if they weren't able to beat Miami in the ACC championship game, and now it's almost all gone after that.
Right. I mean, what thoughts do you have, Gehrig?
Yeah, don't mean to parody here, Billy, but that game was insane. I watched the whole Louisville-Miami game from a couple weeks ago, and Louisville looked solid. They are a very, very underrated team, and this was inevitable. They were going to come into someone's house, and they were going to beat them and shock the entire nation. That was that game against Clemson. Right. They got a real team there, and if they could string together a couple games, maybe a couple losses for Miami and the other big boys in the ACC, we could be seeing a dangerous playoff team here. And just another stat, that was SMU's first ranked win at home since way before the death penalty. That was a while coming for the Mustangs. Yeah, I think it was black and white cameras when the last time they got a ranked win at home. So it's a lot of good vibes in Dallas. And a good team coming up here.
And I think that proves more than anything that anything you believe in is certainly possible. We'll now send it over to Nicole Dalton for the latest in Marauder Athletics. Nicole?
Thanks, Aaron. Millersville football ended their season at home with a 49-17 loss against Kutztown University. While Kutztown is still undefeated, there were a lot of great numbers to come out of this game. Millersville threw the first red zone touchdown against Kutztown this season, as well as scoring the second most amount of points against them as well. The Marauders will end their season on the road at Bloomsburg University and Edinburgh in the upcoming weeks. Wrestling had a strong start to their season, placing second place at the Glenville State Invitational. 12 Marauders placed, and seniors Bryce Beatty and Bishop McCoy won first place. Field hockey ended their season winning 1-0 against Mansfield. The point came during overtime after a rebound shot taken by Emma Ruley. They ended their season with an 8-9 record overall and were 3-6 against PSAC opponents. Men's soccer got an early lead against Shepherd, and the lead was kept until a goal was scored by the Rams within 15 minutes left of the game. This ended in a tie, taking the Marauders to have 5 wins, 2 losses, and 2 ties in the PSAC East, and 8 wins, 6 losses, and 2 ties for the season overall. They will play their final home game against Bloomsburg before going to the PSAC quarterfinals. Other games this week included women's volleyball winning against Lockhaven and a 1-3 loss against Bloomsburg, and a close race for the women's swimming team losing 130.5 points to 131.5 by East Stroudsburg. Coming up, cross country and men and women's soccer will be competing in important games for their season. Cross country will be attending the NCAA Regional in Norton, Ohio, and men and women's soccer will be playing in the PSAC quarterfinals on the 11th and the 12th. Let's send it back to Aaron for the burning questions around the NFL. Aaron?
Thanks, Nicole. It's time for that burning question. How about them Cowboys? The boys from Dallas have found themselves in a hole after losing their 3rd straight game to the Atlanta Falcons, with visible frustration on the sideline from players and coaches and a lot of head scratching as the Cowboys sit in 3rd place in the NFC East standings. With their schedule not getting any easier in the next 3 weeks, Billy, how do you think the Cowboys get back on the saddle?
I don't. Their season's over. Dak is pretty much out for the next month, and like we just said, their next 3 games, just to go down, it's the Eagles, who have won 4 in a row, the Texans, who, granted, they just lost to the Jets, but they're still a really good team, and then they're at Washington, who looks like they might actually be really, really good.
Right.
Yeah, Dallas, they can't stop the run. They can't run the ball. And now with Dak hurt, they were depending a lot on Dak to make big plays for them, and he couldn't. And now they're going to need Cooper Rush to do that, or maybe even Trey Lance. We'll see what happens with that situation. They still haven't got Micah Parsons back. I don't know if he's coming back this game. I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. But everything that could go wrong for Dallas over the last few weeks has gone as south as quickly as it could. But real quick, I want to give a lot of credit to Atlanta. Atlanta looked really good on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kirk Cousins is playing some really good football right now. Bijan Robinson looks like one of the best backs in the league, which is what we expected. Drake London's been great. And that defense played really well against Dallas. I know it looked like a one-possession game, but that was a 15-point game with, like, a minute to go. And then Dallas scored a garbage time touchdown. So, the Dallas season's over.
Yeah, and I mean, it almost feels like anything that Dallas does at this point is damage control for their season. I mean, Gehrig, what do you think about them?
I could not have said that better myself, partner. It is over in Dallas. And just another fun stat, you expect the Dallas Cowboys to be good in Dallas. They got that massive fan base. Whether or not they know anything about football, that's to be determined. They could just be there for the vibes. But they have not won a home game this season yet. They are over in Dallas. They can't get anything going. It's just... It's the dream of every other fan base in the NFL, and it is not going great for Dallas. Nothing really else can be said about them.
Right. They're already struggling with how New York did in the World Series. Midway through the NFL season means mid-season awards are upon us. Some awards already seem locked up, but awards like the MVP have a lot of conversation with names like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Gehrig, who is getting your midseason MVP vote?
Now, I'm going to go with one of the players you didn't list there. I'm going to go with efficient passing, good games. I'm going to go with Jared Goff from the Detroit Lions. That's my pick. I am loving, well, I'm a Bears fan, but I am loving what is coming out of Detroit right now. And I am terrified of playing them on Thanksgiving. They're going to ruin my time there. But Goff is putting together, maybe not the flashiest games, but he's putting together consistently good, great offensive putouts there, and Detroit is just running away with games. It's like a high school game a couple of times. Like that game against Dallas, that was disgusting. And he doesn't have to do that much. He may not be the most valuable player, and I know that's what we're talking about, but like, just Jared Goff is just the guy you want on your team, and he is woefully underrated.
Right. Bill, who's getting your vote right now?
So I know my guy in the control room, Zach Humphreys, is going to love this, but Lamar Jackson right now is the MVP of the league. He's completing 68% of his passes. He's got 22 total touchdowns and just 2 interceptions. He's got 120.7 passer rating. He is on pace right now to have the best season from a quarterback passer rating wise in the history of the league. And keep in mind, he's doing that against the Bills, the Bengals, the Bucks. What he did, 5 touchdowns, and then obviously last week against Denver. But then I also want to throw in a dark horse there, because as great as Lamar's been, there's got to be a dark horse. And Lamar's going to be playing a team tomorrow night in the Bengals, and if they win, they're 5-5, and all of a sudden they look like they're pretty good. If they have a pretty good record at the end of the year, I think Joe Burrow could absolutely be in that conversation as well. He's completing 70% of his throws, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, with an 108.1 passer rating. I get it, their record's not great. They're 4-5. But in 3 out of their 5 losses, they've scored 25-plus points in those games. Like, they're scoring. Their defense has just really let them down this year.
Right.
But, yeah, I think depending on who has the better record, and obviously if Lamar wins tomorrow night, then Lamar's going to win it over Burrow, obviously. But if Burrow were to win tomorrow night and be able to hold it together for the rest of the year and they win a bunch of games, I would think that Joe Burrow would get his first MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with the Lamar pick either. I know everyone has their thoughts about what's going to happen late in the season, playoffs, but I think when you look at how it looks right now, I don't think you can argue with that. Another midseason headline is the trade deadline. In the past few years, there have been more and more moves, leaving fans anxious for what their favorite teams will do to improve. There are some big names already wearing new threads, like DeAndre Hopkins in Chiefs red and Zadarius Smith heading to the Motor City. After the deadline, Billy, who are your winners and losers?
Well, the obvious winner right now is DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, going from one of the worst teams in the league to now being on the team that will probably win their third straight at this rate. I mean, they just look unstoppable. Washington getting Lattimore is massive. That was the biggest hole, and they figured it out and they already have a great team.
Right.
Detroit, being as great as they've been and being able to add a guy who's a Pro Bowler like Zadarius Smith is huge for them. Some of the losers, I guess you could say, are Titans. Why did you give up D-Hop for that little of a price?
Right.
I would like to also throw in there one of the winners too are the Ravens too. Deontay Johnson's a really good is a pretty good wide receiver. He's not going to be game-changing, but he'll be very good within that receiving room. And then obviously Tre'Davious White, they've been really struggling on that pass defense, so anything can help that pass defense right now. So, but I do think the biggest winner by far and away is DeAndre Hopkins.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gehrig, what do you think?
As Jesse Pinkman said, they can't keep getting away with it. The Kansas City Chiefs just gave nothing to the Tennessee Titans that got one of the best wide receivers in the game for like a bag of chips and a soda. That's it. The biggest loser is the other 32 teams, the other 31 teams in the NFL. I think the Chiefs are on a fast track to win another Super Bowl. They might go undefeated at this point. I don't know. It's just when a team is this transformatively good, like those Patriots were, you just kind of have to sit back and watch it because you can't really do much. If they're going to be pulling off trades like this and also have that core, it's over, I think.
I mean, it just doesn't feel right. If you're DeAndre Hopkins, you might as well be a gambling man to go from the Titans to the Chiefs like that. I mean,
How about hitting the jackpot?
right.
Yeah.
I think you're also right with the Lattimore going to Washington. I think, again, like you've said, they already have a really good team setting up right now. I think that's the kind of move that gets them in a spot to really surprise people going forward the rest of the year. But that'll do for this episode of In the Zone. From Billy Cullen, Gehrig Milbrandt, Nicole, Dalton, and the entire In the Zone crew, I'm your host, Aaron Chun. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on In the Zone.